Good afternoon, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane Pro and HD video blog for the 18th of July. Happy Tuesday to you. The latest on Tropical Storm Don, the forecast track and cone of uncertainty, etc., has shrunk now. Very small area, because this will more than likely dissipate as it moves into the southeast Caribbean Sea, and I'm going to explain why. If we look at the satellite picture this afternoon, this is the visible satellite animation, and you can see that it's mostly made up of blobs of clouds instead of well-defined banded clouds like you would see in a well-defined hurricane. And we'll look at one in just a moment out in the Pacific as an example. So even though it doesn't have the structure that we would typically see with a well-defined tropical storm, nevertheless, tropical storm conditions are certainly possible and forecast for some of these islands here. Probably not so much for Barbados, which is up here, and you think about here's Grenada. They're definitely going to be in the line of some of these squalls. Trinidad and Tobago, possible. So as this moves through, going through pretty quickly, 20 miles per hour or so to the west, this will be out of there before nightfall tonight, most likely. So squally conditions, tropical storm force winds, and some of the heavier, I can't even really call these bands because it's not really a banded, structured type storm, but some of these heavier thunderstorms could bring some of those winds down to the surface, so just be mindful of that. The dry air, the biggest culprit here in terms of what's keeping this system in check, and even though we've had all of this dust and dry air over the Atlantic emanating off of Africa, we've still managed to squeak out 2 tropical storms and 1 tropical depression, all coming out of what we call the main development region through here. And that's definitely a sign that once this climatological pattern evolves to one that's more naturally favorable later in August, boy, things should really start to pick up, and we should see our first hurricane obviously sometime in August. The upper level winds really not doing too much in the way of helping the situation out with the tropical storm down here. Let's try to highlight that right there, just on the edge of some of those stronger southwesterly winds, and with the storm moving from the east to the west headstrong into that, that'll basically sort of shear this out, and the lower level energy will outrun any of those storms. And then over here in the southeast Caribbean, Tropical Storm Don will basically degenerate into an open wave of low pressure. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, things are very busy here with Fernanda, a weakening hurricane, TD number 8E. The E, of course, is for East Pacific. This will eventually become a tropical storm. Here is Greg, and then another system trying to develop just a favorable upward motion pattern and overall background environment in the Pacific. And as I was mentioning, when we talk about what hurricanes and storms should look like, we can take a look here at Fernanda, and you notice even with it weakening, it's got these bands coming into it, and it's much better defined. Even Tropical Storm Greg over here in the far eastern Pacific, it's one solid area of clouds with these bands feeding into it. And if we contrast that just real quick again with this satellite picture of Tropical Storm Don, you see here you've got these globs of clouds, and they're not, organizing into banded structures. And so that tells us that it's not very well organized, and of course that's good news for folks in the Windward Islands. And in terms of what's going to happen with these systems here in the Pacific, even if Fernanda were to come right for Hawaii, which it's not going to, all of this shows up as very stable, cooler water temperature, stable air mass, etc. This would weaken dramatically. We'll keep an eye on it just to be sure, and these other systems will not pose a threat to the Baja nor the Pacific coast of Mexico itself over the next several days. So no worries in the East Pacific. Alrighty, well that's it from me for today. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com, and for Hurricane Pro and HD, have a great rest of your Tuesday afternoon. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.